I needed some authentic palm trees for my Burying the Gold diorama set in the early 18th century Caribbean islands, and I wanted to take the easy route at first and thought of purchasing them. I purchased two different sets of palm trees from Scenic Express. While the set containing the slightly shorter version ended up being pretty good, the other one didn't look that promising at all, despite being in the same per unit price range. As you can see here, the shorter version is a pretty acceptable model tree with nice details and can be used in a diorama without any modification, while the other one looks cheap, poorly made, and is clearly not a miniature model. The leaves are highly glossy with a plasticky finish, the trunk is an electric wire painted brown without any texture whatsoever, and there is some odd colored gravel glued in the place of the crown shaft. Now I had two options: throw away the lot and buy new items, or work on these trees to make them usable. I chose the latter, not only because I dislike throwing my money away, but also because I like a challenge. So in this tutorial, I will demonstrate how I salvage these awful palm trees and transform them into this. I eventually ended up building the whole tree from scratch anyway, except the base structure of the palm leaves, so this can be a very useful tutorial for those who want to build such trees using household materials. If I ever have to build them again, I will certainly build these myself using the same techniques shown here rather than purchasing them. As for the materials, I used normal face tissue paper, which should be available in any normal household or a grocery shop, and I used simple white glue. And along with that, I used some tap water and acrylic paint. So let's go ahead and get started with this classic makeover. Just like all my other projects, I started with a quick image search in Google and started researching about the common beach palm trees. Notice the texture and color of the trunk, the color and shape of the leaves, and general shapes of these trees. I referred back to these pictures periodically throughout the build to stay on track. Back at the workbench, I started the project by removing the leaves from the tree. Once the leaves are removed, what you basically have is a piece of electrical wire. Next step is to use the tissue paper to create the texture of the trunk, very much like the way you see it in this particular tree. At first, I took 3 sheets of tissue paper and stacked them on one another. Then I'd cut 4 sections of long strips using a pair of scissors. Once I had enough strips of tissues of appropriate length, I mixed white glue and water at 60-40 ratio. I took an used brush and applied the glue water mix thoroughly on the electrical wire. Then I took one strip of tissue paper and wrapped it around the wire. I applied more water glue mixture on the tissue to keep it moist in order to prevent it from being glued to the wire too soon, and continued wrapping it around. In the next step, I took a wooden coffee stirrer and started pushing the wet tissue downwards. This created small wrinkles on the tissue. Once dried, this would create an authentic trunk texture. Notice that I have taken small sections at a time and always pushed it downwards, that is towards the roots. The goal was to make the trunk thicker towards the roots and gradually thinner towards the crown. Note that at some places the wet tissue would tear, and that is absolutely fine. In fact, those tears would simulate the stress in the trunk, which is very common in palm trees located in windy beaches. I continue to add more layers towards the bottom to get that gradual increase in thickness towards the roots.
The next phase or the next thing to tackle is this section with the stones and weird pink color stones. So what I've decided is that I'm going to do um, a remnant of dry leaves like this one, and most of the palm trees you'll find something like this in them, and cover this area up for all the three trees. So I'm going to use multi-purpose and humble masking tapes for that, and we will see how we can use masking tape to create this kind of detail on this tree.
Next step is to start painting. I plan to use raw sienna and burnt umber for the shades of brown, olive green and permanent yellow to color the leaves, gray for the trunk, and unbleached titanium white to control the lightness of all shades and bring the right balance.
Well, the next step is going to be painting the leaves. So we're going to use basically all the colors that we have used, you have seen me using so far. That is, we are going to use the raw sienna and burnt umber for the brown shades. We're going to use unbleached titanium to control control the colors, and we can use olive green for the leaves, and of course yellow to control the shades. So let's go ahead and get started. We are gonna, of course, just to to bring an example here, the ones about 3 or 4 leaves at bottom will be drying or totally dried leaves, and then on top we are gonna see how we change the texture from this plasticky green to a more acceptable proper green for the leaves. good to go. Good to go. So these are the three palm trees. Much different than what we started with. This one looks a little different. There's the odd one out as far as the trunk is concerned. But yeah, I mean overall, I'm satisfied with the result, and I think they're gonna, they're going to complement the the rest of the diorama in a nice way. They're still not professional grade or really good quality models that you might want to show off, but definitely they're going to do the job much better than how I received them originally. Well, that concludes this particular video, showing how to make palm trees, better, cheap-looking palm trees better, and hope you liked it. And most importantly, I hope that's useful for you to tackle similar situations. Thank you very much.